Hey, this is Maren, and welcome to the Primordial Love podcast and YouTube channel. Today, I wanted to talk about what it might be like to work together one on one. And I just wanted to start with a little bit of background if you haven't had a chance to hear. I used to be a professional hospital chaplain in hospitals and in clinics. And a lot of my approach is informed by that work. And you may be wondering what that might be like to work together one on one with me. And I would start by saying that we will be in conversation. And what does that mean? That means that a conversation is not one that is in a rush. It's not a conversation that's afraid of silence. It's not a conversation that worries about mystery or the unknown, or is reluctant to feel and experience something that we're talking about. It's a conversation that's really in the moment, that's present and available to what's happening right now, to what you bring on any given time, at any given moment. It's a conversation, really, and I may come back to this, but a conversation that's somewhat like what John O'Donohue talks about when he talks about the Anam Cara, the soul friend relationship. That we are meeting as two humans, as two souls, as two embodied souls, and we are talking. And because of that, maybe I'll just say more about what I bring to that conversation, as has been informed by my profession as a hospital chaplain. And that is creating an environment in which that within you that you feel like you want to share will come forth. Creating an environment and creating the conditions where a person, any person, regardless of where they are on their spiritual journey, regardless of their age. It doesn't matter the kinds of spiritual experiences you've had or where you have been in your life or the things that you've done. We are meeting you and your life and your humanity in the moment with deep respect, with compassion, with curiosity, with embodiment, so that our conversation doesn't always feel like it's, up in our heads. Because words are important, but words can sometimes be the headliner. And they're necessary, but the spaces between the words and the embodied human expressing them are maybe more important. We'll have patience and pay careful attention. We, remarkably, as much as we can, approach the things that you have to share and the person you are without judgment. And this fits with a philosophy that I have that comes from my experience of nature, of physical reality, but also of non-physical reality. That all these things come from one unifying source, which, for lack of a better word, that unifying source is love. And so all things come from that. And instead of immediately categorizing or judging or labeling or diagnosing the things that you have to share and the person that you are. Instead, I believe that all things are welcome because all things are made from this one universal source. And I am just another human on the journey with you. And I am not a human who is going to judge the experiences you've had and the things that you're worried about and the thoughts in your head and the dreams that you want to share with me and the life that you've lived so far. I've worked with so many different kinds of people. And, sometimes I've worked with people in dual diagnosis drug treatment programs. And in the context of that, sometimes people are doing a fifth step, which is giving an account of the things that maybe are still burdening you from the time that you were actively in your addiction. And I once talked to a teenager, and in the midst of everything that he had been through, he was being pressured into activities by other people, getting this pressure from other people to do illegal and immoral things. And he did some of it, but then he started refusing and he was beaten terribly. And he had carried that experience with him. Felt like he couldn't tell his family, and he couldn't really tell the psychologists that were working with him. But he told me, and in the context, again, of non-judgment and just, the recognition that we're all human. I listened to his story. I could see his face lighten. And he literally told me that he felt so much better after being able to share and unburden with another person. I think every person deserves this kind of care, deserves to be held um, deserves to have their sovereignty and their autonomy recognized, deserves to have those intimate places of the things that you wonder about and question, the experiences that you've had and how you're trying to put things together. Everyone deserves the dignity of their illness or their grief, their sadness, the things that have been so challenging for them. Everyone deserves for those things to be honored and recognized. And so, in the context of our conversation together, I will hold a non-judgmental environment in which we can not only talk about these things and explore what they mean for you in an intuitive way, in a slow, wise way, maybe with humor, maybe with just like noticing what it's like to be human and having a laugh at it. And maybe in the context of the silence, I might give some counsel, some nudges, some insights. But that's not necessarily the point or what I lead with. It's the presence and the sinking in, the going into this integrated space of body and soul that is the purpose of our conversation. And what I've noticed sometimes is what emerges from silence. And sometimes with just enough space, with just enough intent, we ask even deeper questions. Or we realize things just in kind of the pregnant depth of a moment that's being held by another person. And so that happens in our conversations. And we settle in, and maybe the pace of our dialogue slows. Maybe your attention is less scattered. Maybe your awareness is opening. Usually there's a sense of grounding, a sense of feeling connected not only to maybe the earth, the moment, but also to yourself. I really find that conversations like this can induce a feeling of self-care, even though like we think of self-care as being other things like taking a bath or, going for a walk in the park, or eating your favorite food or something like that. Those things are certainly self-care. But this is a self-care where the conversation can hold the space and maybe a mirror to the real you with love, Because, like I said, all things come from that. All things come from love. It is an act of self-care to pay attention on purpose in the moment. Sometimes I talk about this work being finding a more satisfying map, because we can really be put on, journeys with spiritual practices and religious practices and books and self-help and all this kind of thing. And but I think the most satisfying map is the one that returns you back to you, and in the process shows you maybe the parts of you and the other and nature and the universe that are just so fruitful and ripe for you personally to discover. And it's like this, you know how the Marauders map in Harry Potter, how it just kind of appears on the paper. I feel like the map of your universe in conversation like this can start to appear on the paper in your place in the universe, and where you are and how you're moving and how you're interacting and in relationship with the universe. Ultimately, if we work together, it is my hope that you are deeply heard, that you feel deeply seen, that you experience a conversation where things do not need to be hidden, but instead respected and honored. I hope that ultimately this conversation will leave you more in contact with the beauty and the mystery of who you are, who you're continuing to become. I really look forward to working with you.